Today's episode is brought to you by Fire Facilities. Make training count with their custom-made all-steel live fire training facilities. Their made-in-the-USA towers and burn rooms are the best for preparing, responding, and surviving the challenges you face every day. Welcome back to 3-Point Firefighter. As always, I am your AI-generated host, the Jakatron 3000. Since getting this update for the editing of the podcast, the real Jake loves hearing his voice sound like a robot and makes me say stupid stuff like pee-pee and poopy. Now down to business. Today's guest is Lacey Marcotte from Northville Township Fire in Michigan. Lacey has been in the fire service for over 16 years and started with the Van Buren Fire Department in Michigan. She eventually wound up at Northville. Lacey is an amazing firefighter with a fantastic view on fire service culture. So sit back, relax, and enjoy listening to Lacey Marcotte. So you get too excited with the voice changing. Sorry. So you had a good time. You went to Cisco Brewery, which is, for those who don't know, look it up. It is like a big, it's a whole block that is a bunch of, like wagons for like food and beer. There's a lot of music, and it's in the middle of all these tall buildings. So at night, it looks amazing. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, you went there, had a good time. Yeah. Now what? Now we're going to talk about, we got about an hour to kill.
It makes me want to go back again, but it makes me want to go to the next IFF convention, which is in Arlington, Texas in 2 years. But having a union that will send you, like, wow, how incredible is that? So that is my attitude of gratitude towards my union.
Oh, I'm a big union person. There's problems, I think, with all unions. Sometimes, say, they got to do their job and protect their members, even though sometimes the members maybe don't deserve protecting. But I think those are rare cases. I think that's the white noise on the bell curve. I love unions. I do. I love my union. I've only been in one, Local 410, and I think they got it right. So now the one thing, let me ask you about your union. When it comes to contract negotiations, what are the basic things that you pretty much always see coming up for negotiations? Because I have a thing that I want to bring up.
I think across the board for negotiations right now, so that we have a lot of departments in our area who can't hire people, and they're struggling. Northville Township is one of the only ones that continuously receives applications. And I think it has a lot to do about culture, which we'll hit on, but the common ones are, vacation, paid time off, whether it be personal leave or personal business, sick time, vacation time. Then we have a lot that tuition reimbursement. So a union contract that recently got posted in our area that they're hiring and they just settled on their contract is up to your master's is full 100% tuition reimbursement. Then you have a lot that are looking into even
full reimbursement for a master's degree.
Yeah. So that was one of the local ones that just got, like, I'm in my master's now. I believe it's like $5,200 a year towards my master's through the township. And then one place I worked, they'd give you like 14 or 15 grand, and they basically would pay you that money until they paid you back for your master's, or up to that amount. So like, say I did my master's in a year and a half, I was just a go-getter, knocked it out, then they would pay me back. Let's say it took them 3 years. It's weird how they would only give you $5,000 a year, I think. So, but they would pay you back until you were fully paid back.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What else?
Super. So then you have, your multiplier. That's a big negotiator, whether it's you use a lot of the departments around you that just settled and see like, oh, they got that, let's go for that. Or sometimes it's you look at ones that do different work schedules. So Northville switched, I don't know, a few years back about we now do the 3-4 instead of the 24 on, 48 off. They do the 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 4 days off. So
Yeah, it's
That's their
schedule I was
schedule.
on, yeah, for a while. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. This is
You
my
like it?
first time. I'm still getting used to it. I feel like I'm either always at work or I feel like I'm never at work. It's kind of weird, but it is a little bit
Mhm.
different. I did the 24 on, 48 off. Every 10th day was a Kelly day. So,
That's good.
um, yeah, so I like both schedules. I haven't done a lot of trades necessarily. So, constantly like it is maxed out at Northville. So I want to say it's no more than 56 hours straight. So you have to take time in between, which is actually like, it's nice that they don't want to just burn their people out. I appreciate that. And then also they want to still provide the quality service to the community, of course, first and foremost. So that aspect of it is also nice that they take into consideration. So it's safer.
That's nice. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Um, so what about is it always about money and benefits every time? Is there anything in your contract that you try to negotiate, like replacing vehicles or health and wellness, stuff like that?
Um, I think mostly it's about, pension, retiree health care, that kind of stuff. I think our department in general focuses on the replacement of vehicles, new equipment, new gear, that kind of stuff is handled by the township. So it's really, I could be totally wrong, and I'll send you a text if I am. But
No, no, no.
most,
This is legal.
yeah,
This is a legal binding podcast.
yeah, most most departments I know don't go for the new equipment. That's handled in like the department side. But I
Really?
mean they can advocate for it for sure.
Okay. Fair
But
enough.
Northville typically like they have their process of they get new vehicles and shortly after they research the new vehicles. So like for instance, we're due 2 new rescues in like a month or so. And then it'll, whatever we decide to do with the other rescues we have. So we always have that backup. And then we're
So
also looking towards the future. So
you just opened up a new station, right? Or is it about to open?
it's going to open here probably in the next 6 months, 8 months, give or take. So we did just tour it though the other day, which is crazy because they're building that thing wicked fast. I mean, it's 96,000 square feet. It's going to house the police department, a second station for the fire department, and then DPW. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's big.
That's 1/3 of that I like.
Yeah.
Hanging out with it. But you know what? Honestly, I think it's a good idea for cops to hang around firefighters so they can see what heroes are. So, hey,
Then
listen,
make
if you're
them.
a cop and you're listening, don't take it personal. I just think you guys are all idiots. I'm joking. I kid. I kid.
it
Yeah, I'd like to. Wouldn't mind trying to come up there for the grand opening,
Yeah.
but I haven't been invited yet. So,
Yeah, probably just because we don't know when it is. That's all. As
well,
soon as I get it, I'm gonna send it. Look in the mailbox. Or you
okay.
know what? I'll have my owl bring it. My owl will probably hand deliver it.
See, there you go. You got your very own owl. So
Yeah.
when my wife's like, "There's an owl in the front yard with a fucking envelope. What's up with that?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll forget
So,
about you and I'll go, "Oh, I'm actually a wizard." And then she'll open it up and she goes, "Oh, it's Lacey."
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all.
You remember my lovely bride, Shirley?
I do.
Yeah. We've been talking about coming back up there. I need to come back because I missed that day that I was supposed to come up there.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah, I
happy.
heard. That was
Yeah,
a bummer.
I fucked up on that one. Well, they would. I got hit by a guy. So my car's being worked on. They gave me a rental, and then his insurance. And I don't want to mention the insurance because I don't want to like bash their insurance. So I'm not going to mention his insurance because I felt like it wasn't that good. But he had progressive insurance. Well, shit. Um, he had progressive insurance, and they kept fucking with me on that rental car. They wanted me to pay for it. And then after a
That's the
certain point,
worst.
yeah, they were dicks. So I was up there, and they're like, "Well, if you bring it back tomorrow morning at between 9 and 10, we won't charge you, or we're gonna have to charge you." And I'm like, "I didn't hit my own car, bro." But you know what? People are listening to this. They're going, "Is this a firefighter podcast? This isn't like a firefighter podcast." But I need to talk about progressive insurance and how it sucks for me.
I mean, that's a life problem. So
It
I
is.
feel like firefighters talk about life problems.
Sure. We solve life problems.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. So in the opening, we talked about that you've worked for a couple departments. Um, you currently work for Northville Township, one of my top. Now it's my top 5. I've got 5 departments that I just got back from Canada, and I met Northville Township in Canada. It's called Grand Prairie, and it's not just Grand Prairie; it's all the firefighters around there. So now I now have 5 that, and when I say favorite, that means if I could go back in time, I would push my mom down a flight of stairs just to get the opportunity to work at that place. Um, Northville's probably number 2 for me. I love
Okay,
Northville Township, FDNY, just because when I got in the fire service, you know,
I understand.
Patty Brown, all that stuff. Um, but it was a great place. But it did honestly remind me of Northville. So Northville Township is anybody's listening to this podcast know it's all I do is I talk about them and I interview people from them, and it really is that fantastic a place to work. And I believe it's for a million different reasons, a million little reasons. But I'd say if I had to put it under one umbrella, I think it's the culture. The culture there is amazing. People like coming to work. People like being at work. People like doing the job. And every Northville Township firefighter I've ever spent time with is very much community centered, right? It's them before us. So I know you worked at a place called Van Buren, which was a really good fire department for you, but it was paid on call and you
Right.
were looking for other opportunities. And then you went to another department and then you ended up at Northville. Is that right?
That is right.
Yeah.
Yes, though.
Tell me
I
about
did
Van
like,
Buren. I've heard more than one great thing about Van Buren from more than one great firefighter.
yeah, so Van Buren was a super cool department. They have 2 stations. They run 2 people per station per day. You work 12-hour shifts at the time. It was paid on call part-time. So I was working full-time hours without the full-time benefits. So after waiting, after like 8 years, I was like, okay, I gotta actually get a full-time job. So I left there. But there, what I liked is I was born and raised in the area. I knew the community super well. Even from school days to when I graduated and I worked there, I knew a lot of the people in the area. They are 36 square miles. They run about 4,000 calls a year. They have a 7-mile lake. They have 2 major expressways in Michigan. They have a hazardous waste landfill site. Then they have other landfills. They have a passenger train. They have trains that carry hazmat through the township all the time. They're a mix of rural and city, so you get the best of both worlds. And they are so interesting because they're not a big department, but they run on their variety of calls. So they don't provide, they're non-transporting. So they do a lot of extrication and fire and medical calls. I think when I worked there, we averaged like 2 drownings a year in the lake. And it was always something different there.
But now they're full time, right?
Now the majority of them is full time. They do still have some part timers, and they still do paid on call just because they go show up to a fire with 4 people. So between the areas, the auto aid agreements they have, and then the part time or the paid on callers coming back, that's how they staff their fires. So they do have a couple they rely on. So
All right, shout out to Van Buren again. I wish I could remember the other people that I talked to about it. I've never heard a bad thing about it,
yeah.
which is difficult. Do you think that the area you're in is generally like just really good fire departments, really good fire culture? You don't have to name any fire departments if they're not, but like the area I'm in, it's hit or miss. But if I go out west to Oregon State or Washington State, the culture there is like the entire state that I've seen so far, and I've been out there quite a bit. So, what do you think about your area? Is it just that area, or do you think it's kind of hit and miss?
So speaking on Western Wayne County, so like Southeast Michigan, I would say that the culture is lacking tremendously in the fire service,
Mhm.
which is why I left the last place to go to Northville Township,
But not
just
Van Buren. I
because,
want to be clear. It's not Van
correct,
Buren we're talking about. Okay.
not Van Buren. So I left the last job that I was at, and it was mostly based on the culture. So when you break down, like, oh, okay, you have an employee, let's say you have, whether it be a lieutenant or even it could even be a fellow firefighter, it could be the chief, whatever, you pick your battles. So it's like would it be worth leaving a job because you have an issue with one person? No, I wouldn't say, unless you are your own person, of course. If that one person is causing such a issue in your life where like you're struggling with things, I wouldn't recommend staying, right? Are there other means? Yeah, absolutely. But everyone leaves for their own reason. I didn't leave because I had an issue with one person. I actually really never had an issue with one specific person. It was more of the organization that I struggled with. And it wasn't an overnight decision to leave. It was never on my radar originally when I went there. And so I spent about almost 8 years at this other department. I was a lieutenant for the last 2 of those years. I got promoted. I was one of the most recent people hired to be promoted. So then I had that kind of going against me to an extent, but then also it was like a positive as well on my side. It was more of a fresh take on things. It was more of like, hey, here's where we're at. Here's where we need to go. And then if the culture of the organization wasn't lacking so bad, I wouldn't have made the decision to switch. So and when you look at like the decision to switch, right? So I have people who there when you got promoted to lieutenant, you came off the rescue, you no longer ran the rescue, you no longer cooked, you had a different list of responsibilities, but your responsibilities were almost less than of a firefighter, which I feel like is backwards. You should have more responsibilities as an officer. But
Yes.
it was like, I don't want to say easy to get away with things because I wasn't trying to get away with anything. I never had any disciplinary issues, never was late to work. I was not that employee that came to work to get the title. I wanted the position. So while I was like trying to do everything I could to make the place better, it was just like slowly going back and back and back. And then it was becoming so reactive. And I tried to take the proactive approach. And then finally it was like, you know what? I just made this decision. I applied to one place that I've known for years, that being Northville Township. And I was like, now's the time that I'm going to switch things up. And it's now been 10 months, almost 11 months that I've left. And oh my gosh, the opportunities that I've had, I wouldn't, like, my only regret is not leaving sooner, to be honest, for the sake of how cool it's been of like, I mean, we started today off with talking about Boston. So I got fully sent to Boston, paid by my union for a week. I got sent to FDIC. Things were paid. Got trainings while I was there. Any outdoor or any outside training that I want to go to, it's been covered. Last week they gave me 8 hours release time because I said, "Hey, can I attend this training?" And boom, it was instantly like, go ahead. I don't want to say it doesn't matter what the training's in, but I've went to a variety of trainings across the board. Last week was a peer support training, and the township's like, yeah, absolutely. I was my scheduled day. I didn't have to take any of my own time. I didn't have to find a trade. At the last place, I had to constantly find a trade or take sick time because vacation was like so hard to get. But I was taking even trainings that you were at, like I was taking sick time to go to that training. If I was injured, if I had any issue, nothing was covered on behalf of the organization. So it was like, wait, what are we doing here? I'd be in a classroom, the only person and not in uniform because I was not covered by the department and I was told, hey, you can't wear your uniform. When it's like you're learning fire tactics in a fire department doesn't help you grow as an individual, as an officer, like it's kind of red flag after red flag. So when I said, hey, you know what? I talked to the crew and I said, you know what? I have officially received an offer, and I'm going to take that. And everyone's like, what? Their jaws were on the ground because they just didn't expect it from me. I'm not one who is defeated easily. And I don't want to say I was defeated because I wasn't, but it was the point of like, I've always put the organization first and foremost. And finally I was like, you know what? I'm not getting the passion that I have. Like in return, I'm no longer finding the passion I had for the job just because of the environment I was in. Now, boom, that spark is reignited and I'm ready to just, conquer. And I absolutely love the job and I love the community I'm in. When I made that announcement I was leaving, people were like, what? You're going to give up rank? You're going to throw that away? You're making such a terrible choice. What are you going to do in the future? And blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, listen, I got that rank from when I threw my name in the hat the first time I got it. I can 100% build that back up again. Didn't even consider that an issue for me. just because it's like if I want to set my eyes on it, I'm going to set my eyes on it. But I had the union call me after I left, and they were like, "Hey, we've had a couple other people leave, and we're just surprised. So we know that you left because of the money. So could you write a letter so that we could give it to the admin and let them know?" And I'm like, "Wait, what? Like you guys didn't have my back while I was there." Um, but with the union, the department, the organization in general, it's like they were never for their people. So I struggled with that, but when they asked me to write a statement of how I'm getting better pay now, I was like, I took a massive pay cut. Like, this isn't just the rank. It's not that I left to go make more money. I left for like literally better opportunities, and that is worth the pay cut. A happier work environment and a better culture is 100 times over so much better. So, it is something where it's like, yeah, you think about the money aspect, but just driving to work, like, wow, what a difference. Leaving work, what a difference. We have a group chat of our shift, so there's 11 of us on our shift. Every day we're not at work, we're talking. Every day we're at work, we're talking. Like, it's just such a fun atmosphere. And it's so cool to see the community like love you so much, and it's so fun to love the community. I mean, we're constantly at different events, and our union, it's phenomenal. We have a charity fund, a 501c3. We've raised $1 million to give back to the community. So it's like we're small but
Golly.
mighty. Yeah. So
Wow. And you just threw a Shakespeare quote in there. Outstanding.
just trying to, dot the I's and cross the T's.
I appreciate that.
But
Real quick, we're going to wrap up
okay.
part one with Lacey Marcotte. We've got a lot more to go. For those who don't know, well, I guess it'd be everybody because they didn't know because we didn't do the first. We had this conversation before, but because of some technical issues, we absolutely had to redo this. And I appreciate you being there for me and helping me out and everything. But you brought up before, you were talking about, hey, thanks for being on again. So one of my very first podcasts I did, I think season one, was with Michael Snodgrass out of Gresham Fire Department. And we spent, I think, an hour and a half talking, and I didn't record it at all. I was so excited to talk to the guy. So when I told him, I was hoping that he would obviously want to do it again. And I didn't have to get too far into it. He's, oh man, let's do it again. I'd be glad to do it again. And we did the whole thing over. So that was a good thing for me because that taught me that I need to pay it forward, but it's called 3-Point Firefighter, but today is Lacey Marcotte's podcast, and I want it to be as awesome as you are. So I appreciate you coming back. I appreciate you dealing with all the stuff that we deal. If you're listening at this point, at the beginning of this podcast, we had some trouble with part one. It's the deep state trying to stop us from getting the message out to people about bad culture and toxic workplaces. Good luck. You're not going to get it because coming back next week is going to be part two with Lacey Marcotte. So Lacey, thank you very much. And Absolutely. I'll see you next week.
Sounds great. See you soon.
So we're still here. I guess. Boom. Yeah, just like that. It's not really a week. Going back to what you talked about last week about leaving a department, and it wasn't one person. Everything that you said was just ringing true with me because I went through the same thing. I can 100% say I retired early, and I'm glad I did because where I worked, the culture is as toxic as I've ever experienced. So I can really empathize with what you're saying, but I also realize that sometimes firefighters they're not meant to be at a certain fire department or with certain fire departments. And that's not an insult to the firefighter or the department. For me, there was a time where I contributed to the bad culture of the last place I was at. There was a time where, people would, if people said, wow, you're kind of a Debbie Downer, or you're kind of ruining the day, you're no fun, blah, blah, blah. They were right. A firefighter goes through, they ebb and flow. You've been on long enough, you have ups and downs in the fire service. But for me, realizing that just because I retired from there doesn't mean I belonged there. And I don't know that I 100% felt like I ever belonged there, but the culture was horrible. And I was part of it, not always. And I did try to change it, but it's hard to do. Um, when it sucks going to work, then you're in the wrong job, maybe, or at least maybe the wrong fire department. So for me, I'll never forget that I hated going to work so much that one time in particular, I was laying on the couch the night before, and my stomach, well, I mean, it was physically, I had stomach pains, I had a headache, I was just thinking about going to work. And my lovely bride Ashley said, she goes, you know what? Just quit. It's not worth all of this. So I went to work the next day anyway, just miserable. Um, and what I would do is, and I did it for the rest of the time I was on the floor, is I'd go to Starbucks and buy a $6 coffee every day I went to work. That was my gift to myself for just getting up and going to work and going through that door. And I would not take the first sip until I walked through that door normally, because that was like, all right, you're here for 24 hours. You're locked into this place you don't like and or don't belong probably. So I did that for a long, long time. But then I empowered myself. I'm like, you know what? Partly you're the problem, Barnes. You're part of the problem. So I tried for another department, and I got all the way up to the interview in Louisville Fire Department, Louisville, Kentucky. Great fire department, no complaints. I've never heard a bad thing about it. I didn't get on, so that's the universe saying, you got to stay there. But I remember going back to what you said last week. It wasn't about money. I'd have to start back over. It wasn't about rank. I'd have to start at the bottom. It wasn't about benefits. I didn't care. I just
Mhm.
wanted to find where I belonged. And I feel like, you have found where you belong in Northville, obviously, and maybe you didn't belong in the other places. Um, Let me ask you this: when it comes to, like, when you're talking about culture, who do you think has the biggest influence on culture? Is it the administration, or do you think it's mostly the rank and file?
I think
Majority.
it's most. I think it's mostly rank and file, to be honest. How many times do you hear somebody say, "Hey, there's a great chief that works at this department, like overall great chief." Oh, hey, the township board or the city, whether it's city council, you have those influences of like the township board or the city council, but you still have what happens within the doors at the fire station, within the walls of the fire station. So I'm not saying, oh, every chief is terrible. That's not what I'm saying at all. I wouldn't say that about our chief. It's just like with the people who make up the organization, I feel like are responsible for the organization. And yeah, they might not get to make every single call, like SOP, that kind of call, like they don't get the final say for some things. However, they do determine how things go within the walls of the fire station. So I think that they make the most drastic, direct impact on the everyday life of being a firefighter at said department.
That's funny. I might have a different. I have different experience, so I would have a different answer, I think. But again, it's our experience.
Right.
I think it's easier to maintain a good culture than it is to create a good culture.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
so I think, I my experience has been the opposite. You know, not just because a mayor appoints you to be a chief doesn't mean you should be a chief. You know,
Correct. Yeah.
now if you don't deserve it, you work at it. You take your
Right.
classes and you learn. Everything's out there. But that's been my experience, and that's not to say the rank and file don't have something to do with it. Absolutely. For example, in my particular period of when I was a big bag of monkey shit, I would sit around the firehouse at the table out in the bay, and I would just talk shit about whatever I did, like talk shit about whoever the chief was or whoever the captain, whatever it was. I was that guy, and I had almost no information. But I was like, oh, that guy's a piece of shit. So, yeah, part of the problem, obviously. But if you can't change the culture, you can change you. And I think that's what I went through. That was my transition. I tried, but I would probably still be a big bag of monkey shit if it wasn't for a couple of things. And one of the biggest things was being able to work for the ISFSI and meet some of these people that are the highest level of instructor, and hearing their stories and stuff. I think that's was a big changing point for me. But a toxic workplace is that. I mean, bad culture in a toxic workplace, one's worse than the other, if you ask me.
Yeah, I would agree with your comment about creating the culture is harder than maintaining the positive culture because so if you talk to the guys in Northville Township who were there 15, 20 years, like those guys are still working there. So one of my battalion chiefs, like my direct battalion chief on my shift, Jason Hendrian, phenomenal guy, one of the nicest people I've ever met, one of the most humble people I've ever met, sorry. So
Don't you mean second? Because I'm pretty badass at being
yeah,
humble.
I did say one of the, no, I'm just kidding. But uh, so Jason created a culture committee, and this is just like a couple years new. This culture committee has started, and it's basically because things weren't, sunshine and rainbows years ago. They had to create the culture. Now they're maintaining said culture, and I think it's so cool. And old school mentality, people are like, "Oh, culture committee, like, wow, how sensitive are they, how soft are they, and it's like,
Right.
no, that's why we're getting applications and other departments aren't. Just went to told you last week I went to a peer support class, and of that class I was one of the only people from the county I belong in, and I'm like, that's right there, it was a free class, like, and most other departments were from other counties, and it's like the one person from my county that actually sat next to me, I used to work with his dad for years, and he was just talking about how they've had two openings for almost 3 years now. And I'm like, that is wild to me. When I interviewed in Northville, I went against, I think there were 19 applicants. And just 6 months prior to that, when I did not apply, they had, I don't know how many applicants that time either, but they hired a couple off that list too. And it's like they never have a hard time finding people. But the best part about them and the culture that they're maintaining is no longer they're not filling a position. That's not what they're looking. They're not putting a body and a pulse basically in the position. They hire for what they call the whole person initiative. So now we hire for the 3 C's: character, competency, conditioning. So basically it's a full like 360 process.
Mm-hmm.
It's how is your character, right? Like, are you motivated? Are you passionate? Are you driven? Are you, trustworthy, integrity, honesty? Then you have like emotional intelligence under there, competent, can you do the job, right? Conditioning. Can they condition you? It's not about what you know when you walk in the door. Can they condition you? Can they coach you? Are you coachable? And then can you fit I don't want to even say the mold because there's not really a mold, but can you fit what Northville Township is looking for? And that's what they hire for. So everything is whole person initiative. And this is all, again, with the culture committee. So it's such a difference than the majority of the departments around us.
I got to tell you, you bring up your battalion chief, and I
Mm-hmm.
think I brought this up last time. He sent me this.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, he's going to be on the podcast. I cannot wait. But yeah, he sent me this book for those that can't read. If you're from Kentucky, Leadership, the Warrior's Art. And I kid about Kentucky not reading. I just mean the people that are on truck companies in Kentucky. Um, so I'm pretty excited about that. But okay, so you
Yeah.
mentioned character. Well, first off, let's go back. How do they know that? How do they figure out the 3 C's? Okay. Now, let's say I'm applying. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I give, if you're taking applications, it's a hell of a commute, but I'd do it. But now I'm putting in an application. How do they check those things? It's one thing to check whether I've got a DUI or if I've,
Right.
passed high school or whatever. How do they check these things?
So we always, people are like, oh, Northville Township's stealing somebody else. But most of the people that get brought on in the interview and do well on things are people who have fire service. And then Western Wayne County, between the county hazmat team, the county urban search and rescue team, like the tech rescue team, you go to trainings, you meet a lot of people, and you go to a lot of departments, right? So you see the ins and outs of things, but then you build a rapport with these people, especially the people that if you're on a specialty team with, and then you talk to their department a little bit. You talk to, like, we have so many people who know so many departments in our area and have like some of their best friends work for their departments or worked for their departments because now they work for Northville Township. So we don't recruit for the sake of like, hey, we just want to steal a bunch of people. But if there's there's a high level character who is not in the right fit of that department, they often switch and come to Northville Township, and it's things are so much better for them. And so it's like we're bringing these high caliber people just because their organization is failing them. Really, it's we're not sugarcoating things. It's like, hey, here's what we have to offer. You know, we don't run on tons of fires, and we do have some senior living centers and some assisted living. Like, we do go on those typical medical calls and those lift assists. But however, we have a great culture within our township, within our union, within the community. Like, it's we typically kind of chat with each other, and that's how things are. I mean, that's
So
how
a
we
smaller
find those.
community, you kind of know. I mean, it's
Hmm.
a subjective thing, but just the fact that you're looking for it. So, like to me, I didn't understand character in the fire service. Never even considered it until I got to talk to the gentleman from Fairfax, Rocky Alvaro,
Oh
and
yeah,
he has a great
yeah,
speech. And it, it's like to me looking back on it, character was assumed. If you're filling out this application, if you took the job,
correct.
you're of good character. But character is one of those things that not only you need to have, but needs to be monitored. And if it's not where it needs to be, I think it's one of those things that you can work on. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if they are of just ingrained bad character, then they need to go. They just need
Correct.
to go.
Correct. And you know, when you say they need to go, it's like it, another side of the culture, right? Is um the happiness, yeah, within the department, but also like the organization. What is the organization offering too, you know? So when you look at the, like, we've never laid somebody off before. I believe we did have one grant we got to fill some positions. However, everybody got hired from that grant. They didn't get, you know, let go after it. Um, we talked last week about equipment and vehicles and the replacement of that. Northville Township is super proactive on that. EMS equipment, same thing. Everything's like state of the art. We have companies who come to us to try things out. And that's crazy to me that you have roughly, you know, including our chief, I think we're right around 38 personnel. 38 people. We're not a massive department. We're running just under 4,000 calls. We're only 16 square miles. We're not, like you talked about Rocky or Rocco. You know, we don't have 1,300 personnel. We're not running over 100,000 calls. However, these other companies, whether it be Stryker or MSA or when we're trying things out for these companies, they're like, hey, we just want people who will, you know, can accept change, who will do things, you know, like when you also hit on ISFSI, and then when things are done because they're factual, statistic driven science, like that's why we do things. We don't do things because that's how they've always done things in the fire service. We don't do things because that's how Northville Township always handled things. We do things because they're practical. So our cardiac arrest national stand, we're 3 times the national standard for saves. We have
Really?
grants. Yeah, yeah, we're leading in our state for cardiac arrest survivability, and it's because we have everything done so meticulous down to the T of like, hey, we can improve on this. Like our EMS wise, we are constantly like, you know what, we don't, you know, we do this, but is that the best way to do things? So we'll switch things. Like, it's just the stance of, again, basic cardiac arrest. How do we run things? We run things different here than I've ever experienced in 16 years. And it is so clear. It is so concise. We do, fire-wise, we do what's called a high performance series. Everything's figured out. Everything's predetermined to an extent, right? Like, obviously, every fire is different, but it's such a, so like, when we look at other videos or when we hear these stories from the other communities, we're like, wait, what happened? You know, okay. And how can we learn from it, right? It's not like, oh, we would never do that. No, it's how can we be better, right? How can we do better? How can we provide a better service? And so when you look at um, the money side of things, we are applying for grants. Like Northville Township is a very affluent community. However, we're not letting them pay. Like, we don't just say, "Oh yeah, give us this money." We're still applying for these grants. We just got $1 million grant for a ladder truck. We've got $100,000 grant recently for new communication system in our dispatch center. We have a grant that we just got for SCBAs that we shared with 5 other departments, I think it was. And it's constantly like, hey, let's use our resources. Let's advocate for things that could be better. And that's what we do. I mean, and that's why things are always so nice. I feel like every day I'm like, wow, I open a compartment. This is the craziest thing to me. And it's not that we're entitled, it's not that we're privileged, it's that we're grateful and we do use the resources that are available to us. So on the engine, the rear compartment, it has 2 chainsaws, 2 vent saws, 2 K12s. One of each is gas powered, one of each is battery operated. And then it's like in that compartment we have 2 ventilation fans. And it's like, okay, what's the best thing out there? Can we get it? Some things you can't get, right? Maybe not off the rip. Stryker, they just released a new life pack. And I think we're trying to get 5 of them. And it's like, what can we do what can we do grant wise for that? We don't ask the organization to pay for everything. It's like, hey, we want these things, how can we work for them? So again, that I feel like falls back on the culture of like, the people care, the pride's there, the passion is there, and if it's something we could learn from and we could be humbled by, we happily will change our ways or adapt to the situation to be better for the community.
Let's bring it full circle. You mentioned a lot of grants. Who writes those grants?
So we have, well, one of them actually was written by the township supervisor recently.
Nah, not him.
For the dispatch equipment, but we do have some phenomenal dudes inside the station. So Chris Wiggins, right? Frank the Tank is what you call him.
Frank the Tank. I love me Frank. Hey, Frank, I know you're listening. Love you, buddy.
Name drop.
Name drop.
So Chris is a phenomenal dude, man. He has I think I've told you in the past that I went through Fire Academy with Chris. So I've known Chris since I was, I don't know, 8 years old, 9 years old, give or take. So I've watched him grow into who he is today, and it's such a cool journey to not only see but to be a part of. And then we full circled it, right? So I started working in Van Buren. Another shout out to Van Buren is I think 5 of us from Northville started in Van Buren. So we got tons of experience there, tons of skill we built from there. But every department in the area typically has at least 1 to 2 people who work for Van Buren. So it's neat to see because whenever we do like big union things, we always see each other and it's neat. But so Chris does a phenomenal job with his grant writing. And then he also, I believe there's another guy at work who also now writes for him too. So it's like he's not being, he's never selfish with anything he does. It's like, hey, how can I help the place? How can I help the people? How can I help the area? I mean, like, he has drastically helped a variety of departments throughout Western Wayne County or Washtenaw County. So Wayne County in Michigan borders Washtenaw County. So Chris has helped with both aspects or both counties. So it's pretty neat to have such a big influence on the fire service. I live in the city of Belleville. Chris has written grants for the city of Belleville. He's written grants for Van Buren Township. It's just like meeting people, communicating with people, and then helping them. Like, so cool.
And that's such a great resource, our grants. And I've had this talk with Frank, and it's a great resource, but man, there's an art to writing a grant. There truly is. And it's not like you write one thing and then all of a sudden a new truck shows up. It's
Right.
writing it, it's accepting it, it's sticking to the rules, it's reporting back. It is a process. And I used to say the hardest thing and most misunderstood thing in this world is drywall finishing, simply because I tried it, I sucked at it. Therefore, it has to be an artistic thing. If I
Right.
can't do it, grant writing is right up there. So finishing drywall and grant writing, you're saying, well, those are 2 weird things. They're 2 things I respect the shit of that I don't
absolutely.
think I could do. I've tried and I have failed miserably. So that's great. And, yeah, I've been in Northville Township. It's a very nice place. But you're right. It's the fire department is not leeching off the community by any means. If that was the case, you'd have many fire stations, many fire trucks, all this.
Right.
Big shout out to the grant writing and respecting the community enough to try to use the community last, I guess is what I'm getting at. Using community last to do what's best for the community. And everything you said about having the 2 different battery saws and that gas powered saw, that is a community first approach. That's exactly what that is. And Northville has always been that way, as far as I've known. And like I said, been blessed to go up there and just talk to the people. You're not like a one-off at Northville. Everybody I've talked to just about at Northville is like you. They're passionate. They love where they work. And that goes so far. When you have a good culture. Now, there's another thing we've talked about, speaking of culture, is, and I'm an old person. I'll be 22 next month. So
I didn't say anything.
Okay. Well, I was waiting because you're like, oh God, you look so old. It's just, it's a filter I'm using. The way new people were treated originally, at least my experience, was, poorly. You come into work, shut up. First rule of being a new person, being a rookie, is shut up. You're not here to talk. You're here to listen. Close your mouth, open your ears. And I went through that in the military, but it was the military. So you kind of got to give them, and I'm not complaining. The best thing I ever did was become a firefighter in the military. Then I went to Lacey, Kentucky. Lacey, Kentucky was similar, but not hateful. They weren't hateful by any means. But the stories I've been hearing, and where I've worked in the past, other places that weren't the other two, I'll let you all do the math. They treated rookies pretty bad, and I'm sure I did the same thing. I had to have. There's no way that I know you're looking at me. You go, "Oh my God, you're so perfect." No. There was a lot of fucking mistakes to get to where I'm at now, and I'm still nowhere where I need to be. But all this to say that culture starts with day one rookie school, right? Or if you're a lateral and you have to do 6 months, but it starts day one. So if day one, you've got a guy coming up to you and treating you like shit, fucking with you the first day, doing all that stuff, you're setting a tone whether you know it or not, right? So what was your experience in your other places versus Northville? And they may be the same. What was the culture like coming into it as a new person? To them, to Northville, not like new to the fire service.
Jake, you froze a bit.
It says trying to reconnect. Hold on a second.
Can you hear me? You froze.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully I won't freeze again.
Okay.
But did you hear my last question about
I heard it was like, yeah, I think
culture,
I got it.
Being a new person. So what was your experience being a new person basically 3 times? Were they vastly different? Were they fairly the same?
So the first time, it was exactly what I expected. They, set the standards, they set the expectations, and then I just had to meet them. Along the way, though, I had multiple people who were like, hey, if we can help you, we want to help you. Second place, a bit opposite. You were labeled a rookie or a cadet, or a candidate, actually. And there you were basically, you had to do all the cleaning. You had to, it used to be like sit out in the bay. You couldn't eat with the shift. That wasn't allowed unless they invited you. You got your food the last, but you had to clean up before anybody else did. So it was like, you really couldn't even eat a whole lot. And then it was constantly you have no say because you're a new person. And I mean, I had people who would be like, not when I was a rookie, but when now, current day, right before I left, it was senior guys would be like, listen, I don't care who you are. I don't care what your name is. I'll talk to you in a year if you make it through probation. And I was just like, what? Like, how did we allow that to be a thing? So that was way different. Then in Northville Township, it was way different. So the first day you walked in, they were instantly like, hey, we know you all have experience. And I want to say the group I got hired with, we had over 45 years of experience in the fire service. And it's
Wow.
like, and they didn't tell you like shut up and just go with what everybody says. It's like, hey, if you have a way we could learn, if we could change things, again, factually, statistically, what's the most effective, safe way to do things, then they'd always hear you out. And it was never like, hi, I'm a nobody. No, that was like right off the rip. We didn't do maps or mops, so no cleaning. Actually, I think I maybe washed a fire truck. So we did a 4 week period of 40 hours. So we did like Monday through Thursday. We didn't even do 5 days. They were like, no, you can have days off too. So we'd do 4 days on and then 3 days off. During that time, it was like,
And that was 10
so
hours a day, or is it
it
24
was
hours? I mean,
it was 10 hours a day for the
10 hours
first
a day.
4 weeks.
Okay.
Oh no, we're
Did
glitched.
I freeze again?
We're freezing. Yeah.
That's all right. You can
So,
keep trying, Deep State. We're getting a message out, bro.
right. So we did 4 weeks of 40-hour weeks. So we did tens. And then during that, which was so cool that the department paid overtime for other guys to come to teach us every day, So it was neat to see that these guys were, yeah, they were getting paid to be there, but they were so welcoming. And then we met the majority of the department even by the time we went to shift, because it was like, oh, these two guys are going to come with us today. And I say two guys, but that was on top of, three other people or four other people that were with us every day. Then on top of it, during that 40-hour span, they took us to like 5 or 6 different communities to work with their training facility. Like, hey, this day we're going to do burning here. This day we're going to do search and rescue here. And we went to another one where they like had a massive roof training prop, and then we cut holes on their roof prop. And it was like so neat to see that they weren't just using their own resources, but they were using resources of other departments around us. And then it was like building us from the get-go of like, hey, this is what we have to offer. We want you to be happy because your happiness does matter. So that was really neat to see that we had like people actually wanting to help us, not just because they were making overtime. And then when I hit on the maps and mops, again, we didn't spend our time cleaning. We didn't come into work to clean everything. We didn't do all the truck checks for all the people. That was like, we didn't do truck checks really until we were off of our 40-hour week. And then they're like, here, now you go with the crews. Now you work your 24-hour shifts. And then even at the end of our probationary period, or we had like a month of 24s, and then they said, hey, do you guys want to switch shifts? What shift do you guys want? And then they even let us pick our shift. Like, to me, that is such a crazy
I've
thing. Like,
never heard of anything like that. How could they
yeah,
even make that happen if everybody wanted, or not everybody wanted to switch shifts? I mean, that would
right. So we had to
that's
like
a
we obviously had to like space it out. So it went from, the 5 of us, the most senior person, and then it went down to the last person. But, one shift might have had one or two spots available across the board. And so some guys were like, you know what, I did my month probation on this shift. Normally Northville does you do a month on each platoon.
Mhm.
Just to learn everybody, but they're like, you know what, they accelerated it because we were all lateral hires, so they gave us a 6 month probationary period. And then literally, I blinked my eyes and we had a 6 month, we had our probationary ceremony, which they threw this big ceremony, invited all of our families. Everyone gave speeches, and it was like, wow. Like when I got promoted, my family wasn't even allowed to come to the station for my promotion. When I got firefighter of the year in 2021, was not allowed to have anybody at the station. And it was like there was no ceremonies. It was literally, here you go, here's your new helmet. Here you go, congrats, you were nominated for firefighter of the year, or you were chosen. And like, what? Like, you see those things, and like, gosh, the organization, those little things really do change things, and they
Yeah.
really do have an impact. And it's like, it used to be such like, where's the pride in it? Where's the, hey, like, I truly mean this, congratulations, or hey, you really worked hard for this. This is super cool. It was like, hey, we're going to interrupt a roll call real quick. By the way, cool, fist bump. Congrats, keep it up. That was it. I was like, okay, cool. Wow.
It sounds like to me Northville invests in its people, truly invests from day one to when you leave. That's amazing. And I know there's got to be other fire departments out there. I've met a ton. I've been to a ton of great fire departments. Don't get me wrong. But there's still the minority of the fire service as far as culture. It
Oh
seems like
yeah.
culture is a bad word. I hear constantly that, well, they joined us, we didn't join them. Um, that drives me nuts. And that, if they can't hack it, they can go somewhere else and blah, blah, blah. And it is such a relief to see places actually making better firefighters. Because if you make a better firefighter, you're making a better community. And that
Yeah.
it's ultimately that. I know a lot of people are complaining about pronouns and everything. Pronoun, you can't blah blah blah. I love the pronoun game in the fire service, and I highly recommend everybody adopt the pronoun game in the fire service because it's about them, not us. Right?
Hmm.
That's my favorite pronoun game to play. Is it's about them. It's not about us. And places like Northville, especially Northville, get that. They start with the community and they work backwards. And to be a brand new person coming in there and being treated like that with your learning and your experience mattering so much, no mops or maps. I like that. I really do like that. I've experienced a lot of different things in the fire service, and I personally have never experienced what you went through at Northville. Maybe at other places I have experienced, but it's nice to know that the fire service is being handed over to better firefighters. You all are better firefighters. Hear the generation game a whole lot. Oh, these guys, they don't want to learn, blah, blah, blah. Nope,
Right.
it's a different generation. Different things have influenced them, different things have affected, excuse me. It's not them, right? It's you. So to see all this transpire and know the people that are a part of it is just amazing to me. And I hope people listening to this take it to heart and realize that they can make a difference in their fire department. And maybe it's a small thing. Maybe it's just putting together a culture committee, right? It'll take a while. If you got a bad culture, it's going to take a while, but it's worth the effort. And talking to Lacey today, you've heard her go from, the whole spectrum of culture that she's endured, and same with me, and that's I don't say this a whole lot of times in my podcast. I don't know that I've ever said this in my podcast, to be honest with you, and please fact check me. But this is one of my favorites, bar none. I absolutely one of my favorite podcasts I've done were these two with you, Lacey, because I love talking culture and I love somebody that's experienced that whole spectrum. So it's been a blast for me to have you on here. You've been extremely tolerant. The deep state has tried to suppress our message, but they're not going to. They can't stop us.
It just
They'll slow us down, but they ain't gonna stop us.
right. They showed our resilient culture that we have. It's we rose above. We conquered it, Jake. And
You and I together, we can do anything.
oh,
Anything.
unstoppable. We're
Now
fantastical.
we are. I was just about to use that word. I was going to use the word fantastical. Get out of my head. I always like to end my podcast with best firehouse prank that you've played or have had played on you, and then so we're going to do that. But I really want to end. I got something to say after that. So let's start with the firehouse prank, and then I would very much like to end it with something else. So go right ahead.
So I would say my best. I'm not a big prankster. I am a joker because I love to laugh, but pranking I typically don't do a lot of. I've done the traditional, Kool-Aid in the gloves. My favorite, which I think I might have spoke a little bit about before, but we had someone clear out their pantry because they were moving. I worked in Van Buren at the time, and this lady brought in stuff unopened and opened, which her heart, God bless it. She was just trying to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe they could use it. Well, she brought in a bag of mung beans. And the mung beans, I had no clue what they are. I'm looking at the bag and I'm like, I've never heard of a mung bean. So for all the people out there who have no clue what it is, you're in the same category as me. But anyways, they're these tiny, tiny, tiny little, like it's like a little ball. And so I dumped a couple handfuls in a couple guys' boots, like just so you get that instant, like when you put your foot in, you're like, what is that? Something's in my boot, and then so I did that. The first guy, I just so happened to work with him when he put on his gear, and he does not like mice, so he felt it, looked in it, he thought a mouse pooped in his boot, dumped it out, freaked out. We went on the fire. We came back, pulling the bay. Like, I'm still chuckling about it just because his reaction. And we pull in the bay, and I mean, like, we're talking like hundreds of mung beans on the bay. Clean it up, whatever. And he's still like, I don't even get what that is. Like, for years, I never told him it was me. So then another friend, he's such a good sport about things, and he would mess with me, so I just gave it back to him one day with the mung beans. And the best part is he was working his next shift at the other station, so he took his gear home that night, went to put it in his took it out of the trunk, went to put it in his garage, and he heard something in his boot. So on his front yard, he's like, "What is this?" So he pours the mung beans out, and on his front yard, doesn't think anything of it, puts his boots away. Like weeks later, the mung beans, I don't know, Jake, I think you know this, but mung beans smell terrible when they sprout.
Horrible.
Like, I mean, it's like decaying smell. So he had these grow throughout his whole front yard. And his wife was so thrown off. She's like, "What in the world is this?" And then finally, like maybe a month, 2 months later, I told him like, "Oh yeah, it's mung beans." And he's like, "How do you know that?" It's like, "Well, I put them in your gear." But so his whole front yard smelled absolutely. I actually felt terrible for his wife. I apologized, but it is one of the worst smells I've ever smelled. So there,
Yeah,
that's my best story, and it's
I
pretty
love it.
innocent. So
Well, it is to a point. Here's where you crossed over from amateur to pro when it comes to or I'm sorry, to pranks. Uh, when he spilled it out in his yard,
oh yeah,
that's,
like
I mean, come on, that's awesome.
I would have never guessed that he would have done that. Like, total, I got lucky with it, but man, was it a funny story. And he's such an animated character, and he was like, he's this big dude. He's comparable to the size of Tank.
Hmm.
And he was just so like, what are these growing in my front yard? And he's also like, hey, this smell alarming. So it was the perfect person for that prank to
I
have in the
love it.
weekend. Yeah.
So now firefighters listening to this need to get like some soil and a little planter, put it in the firehouse, and plant mung beans, and just
Yeah.
let that happen. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So here's how I'm going to end it. There's I just want to mention there's a chief officer that you may know at Northville Township. There's a chief officer at Northville Township. Big inspiration to me. He's a fantastic human being, fantastic instructor. Every time I'm around this person, I feel like I get better. I truly, when I met this person, I felt like instantly I found a soulmate, a spiritual guru, just a fantastic human being. So I would be just a fool not to mention this person's name. I want to give him a shout out. And again, I'm pretty sure you know who I'm talking about. So do me a favor. When you go to work next day, would you please say hi to one of the greatest chief officers I've ever met, the greatest fire instructors I've ever met, Chief Tommy Hughes. Will you do that
Yeah.
for me?
For sure. Yeah. So what's funny is I was going to cut you off and be like, Tommy. Yeah, I'll definitely say hi
Yeah.
to Tommy. Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll text him right
Now,
now. Chief.
if
Jake says hi.
you know, you know. And, I just thought that made me laugh. It made me laugh. I do love Tommy, though, by the way. Is he
Yeah.
not like the coolest guy? When he walks in a room, is he not like the coolest guy walking in a room?
Yeah, he like totally lights it up, and it's his character, it's like mellow, but it's present, you know? And Tommy
Bro, that's
is
it.
a phenomenal deputy chief we have, and he's a phenomenal guy. All aspects of it. He does a lot of work with our charity fund. When he was on our union, he did a lot of work. Huge in the community, right? Grew up in the area, and his family, also great people. So I have nothing bad to say. Even
No.
if I did, I mean, I'd probably spill the beans on this podcast since you did say it was your
Sure.
favorite, but I have nothing
Sure.
bad to say about Tommy or his family. So
So cool. I love me some Tommy Hughes, but also there's, for those that know, there's a nice little fun jab in there for me. So with that, Lacey, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it. And
my pleasure.
I look forward to seeing you in the future.
Can't wait. We're gonna have a lot of fun, Jake. I feel like, the dynamic duo just started.
Oh, you know it. You know it. It just happened right here. Bam!
Yeah, I just pushed Jesse out of the way, and here we are.
Who?
Yeah, right?
I don't know a Jesse. Never
Me either.
met a Jesse. Thanks for being on, Miss Lacey.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time, Jake.
Don't hang up. Don't hang up. Stay right there. And cut. Today's podcast was sponsored by Fire Facilities, industry-leading designers and manufacturers of realistic, built-to-last training structures for more than 30 years. Make your training count. Visit firefacilities.com for more information.